This video is going to be extremely helpful if you have your TEF Canada exam coming up soon, because I'm going to spill literally everything that I did during the exam to get C1 in speaking. So I highly recommend watching this video till the end and consider subscribing to the channel. In this video, I'm going to talk about all these strategies that I used in section A, and I'm going to create a separate video for section B because I don't want to keep it too long. Ready? Let's get started. The first strategy is try to keep the conversation fluid rather than robotic. I understand we have 5 minutes and we have to ask 10 questions, so we are often in a hurry to jump to the next question, but I would say this is not the right strategy, because if you think about it, they're not just assessing your speaking skills, but they're also looking at your listening skills. They are assessing how comfortable you are with the language. So if you just keep asking questions one after the other, it might show that probably you have not understood what the examiner has said, right? So always make sure that you try to keep the conversation as natural as possible. And there are two ways of doing it. Number one, always acknowledge what examiner has said. So as soon as you ask your first question, examiner would reply to that question, right? So after that, you should acknowledge and then move on to the next question. So to do that, instead of just saying d'accord after every reply, you can use a variety of vocabulary. For instance, you can say parfait, je comprends, ça me convient, c'est rassurant. So you can use these different examples to make sure that you use variety of vocabulary, and at the same time you're always acknowledging what the examiner has said. The next little tip to make sure that your conversation is as fluid as possible is to add little detail, little personal detail to the conversation. So for instance, if the advertisement is about a course of music, then you can probably say je travaille beaucoup pendant la semaine, proposez-vous des cours le weekend? Or you can probably add some details or some information from your past. So for instance, you can say j'ai déjà fait un cours de musique avec un autre institut l'année dernière, mais je n'ai pas aimé ça car il y avait plus de 10 personnes dans chaque groupe. Donc combien de personnes acceptez-vous par groupe? Now you might be thinking that if I add these little personal details and if I always respond to what examiner has said, would I be able to ask 10 questions in 5 minutes? So first of all, let me tell you guys, it is a misconception that you have to ask 10 questions. They are not really counting the number of questions you are asking. Rather, they are looking at how comfortable you are, how natural the conversation went, and a couple of other things which I'll talk about in a second. So rather than focusing on number of questions, you should focus on adding these little details which I've just talked about, because it is going to make your conversation really strong. The next strategy is try to use diverse range of questions. So I'll take the same example. If you have an advertisement for a course of music, rather than just asking questions on one theme, for instance price, try to ask questions on different themes. For instance, type of participants. Is this course only for kids or for adults as well? What is the price? Do they offer any discounts? Do they offer classes only during the week or during the weekend as well? Do they offer classes online? You have never done a course of music before. You are a beginner, so how long will it take you to get to the next level? Things like that. But avoid asking irrelevant questions. For example, is there a parking space close to your institute, or is there a metro station? Are there any restaurants nearby, because after doing the course you would want to go out and have dinner or lunch? So I think these are irrelevant questions, because as I said earlier, rather than focusing on number of questions you are asking, they focus more on how relevant your questions were, and were they all relevant to the theme of the advertisement, which is music course, right? So just make sure that you ask diverse range of questions, but all should be relevant to the topic. Now the next strategy is try to use different tenses, past tense, present tense and future tense. I agree that most of the questions are going to be in the present tense, because you are generally asking for the details related to the course. But it is not very difficult to use some statements in the past tense and in the future tense. Let me give you an example. So the personal example that I gave earlier, right, that I did a similar course with another institute last year, but I didn't like it. So that would help you to make a sentence in the past tense. Then in the future tense, you can say, after you have asked all the questions, then you can say, yes, I really like your course, I will think about it, and then I'll get back to you. So this is generally the conclusion. But when you are asking questions, then also you can form some future tense. For instance, will there be any competitions between participants before they are able to move on to the next level? So for instance, from beginner to intermediate and to advanced level. So I think if you really put yourself in the situation, and then you think about it, that if you were to take this course, then what kind of questions would you ask? Then you would not have to make a deliberate effort to ask questions in different tenses, but it would happen very, very naturally. The next suggestion is, always try to correct your mistakes if possible. So for instance, while talking, if you have noticed any mistakes that you have made and you know that you can correct it, rather than stressing, oh my god, I've made a mistake, just correct it on your own, and it is not going to cost you any points. In fact, this is going to help you, because examiner can assess that you are very comfortable with the language. You have made couple of mistakes, which is fine, it is human to make mistakes, right? But you are capable of correcting those mistakes. It is going to work in your favor. For instance, if you say, pouvez-vous me donner une réduction? Pardon, pouvez-vous me faire une réduction? Right? So this is how you can correct your mistake. Now the next thing is, try to make as minimum grammatical mistakes as possible and use a wide range of vocabulary. I understand we have been only learning the language for a few years, so they also know that this is a new language for us. So if you make some grammatical mistakes, it's fine, but we should absolutely avoid making some big mistakes. For instance, conjugating the second verb, it is a big problem, right? If you do it only once in the conversation, that is absolutely fine, but if you keep repeating it, then it shows that probably you have not learned the rules well, because it is one of the very basic rules that you should know if you are learning French, right? In terms of vocabulary, I would not recommend to try and learn different difficult words. By vocabulary, I mean that vocabulary which is relevant to the topic. So if you are prepared well and you have studied vocabulary by topic, so if you have used any textbook like Saison or Edito, then you should anyway be very comfortable. But otherwise, if you want to expand your vocabulary, the one thing that I can suggest is, whenever you do your mock test for speaking exam, and you have a topic in front of you, just think about it, like what kind of questions do you want to ask. You can also watch some videos in French. So just to give you an example, when I used to do mock test, I did a topic which was related to repairing things in a cafe. I had never heard about that theme before. So my teacher had sent me some videos to watch before our class. And after I watched those videos, I was able to understand that theme. I also wrote down some vocabulary or some ideas that I can use to form questions during the mock test. So that has really helped me. So rather than stressing too much for learning vocabulary, you should actually try and do as many mock tests as possible on different themes. It is going to enrich your vocabulary anyway. Last strategy is to make sure that you always conclude your conversation. I think before 20 or 30 seconds, examiner is going to give you a sign that time is getting over. So if you are in the middle of a question, just quickly complete that question, and then just don't think that you don't have enough time to conclude, and just do it quick. So if you practice it enough, you would always have your conclusion ready with you, and you can just modify a bit depending on the topic that you get. That is not going to take you more than 10 to 12 seconds. So for instance, in my case, I always used to say, Merci beaucoup madame d'avoir partagé ces informations avec moi, je vous souhaite une bonne journée. So this was my standard conclusion, but if I were to add some little details to it, for instance, going back to the same topic of a music course, then I would say, Merci beaucoup madame d'avoir partagé ces informations avec moi. Je vais en discuter avec mon mari et je vous rappellerai le plus tôt possible. Je vous souhaite une bonne journée. That's it, you see, it doesn't take a lot of time. So these are the strategies that I've always used when I used to do my mock test, and then I ended up using them very, very naturally in the exam, and it has really helped me. So I hope you find this video helpful, and please watch out for another video which I'm going to share in a couple of days on section B. All the best!